Hello, hello.
Shalom.
Oh, Shalom, how are you?
Yeah, how are
Very
you?
good. We have someone on. Adam Litz is on. That's so nice.
Rob.
Okay. Hello, hello. Who else is on? Jenna's on.
Hello.
Oh, very nice. Wow. Okay.
I'm walking.
Okay.
It's so hot.
Wow. Robertson, you mamish walking. This is unbelievable. Okay. And
Yeah, look,
Hannah's
there's
on.
blue
Very
sky.
nice. Oh, wow. Okay. Okay, great. Nadina's on. This is great. Okay, let's start. How's everyone doing today? Good? Oh,
Good,
sure.
how are you?
Should I give everyone a minute to join us? Should I wait a second?
Yeah.
Oh, wait a second. Okay.
So
Hannah, how are
punctual.
you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Hi, how are you? I'm good. How are you?
Good. Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. Are you walking?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay, good. Okay, so we're gonna get started. Oh, no, we'll wait still a minute. Still a few people joining. Shuri, how you going?
I'm good, Rav. How are you?
Amazing. Okay, I guess we'll start. You're not walking, Shuri. I could tell you're not walking.
I walked before. Only allowed an hour a day.
Okay, that's true. I hope you're not keeping to that rule. No, maybe I shouldn't say that. I'm being recorded. Okay. Okay, so we'll get started. Everyone's on mute here. Oh, Galaxy joined us. Okay, so the question we want to deal with today is the question of why aren't we vegetarian? I mean, do we have vegetarians here? Can you give me a thumbs if you're vegetarian? Let's see if I get any thumbs up. Vegetarians?
I'm a pescatarian, sort of.
You're
That's
kind
not-
of a vegetarian.
Yeah, not 100%.
Okay, you're on the process. Okay.
Yeah, I'm on the way.
Alex Miller, are you a vegetarian?
Hi, Rav. No, I'm not,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Okay. Oh, Amy is joining us. Okay. At least we have a vegetarian joining us. Okay, Amy, we have a vegetarian joining us. That's good. A vegan, not just a vegetarian. Or no? Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? Okay. So we're going to start. So the question we're dealing with is why aren't we vegetarians? Okay, so when I say why aren't we vegetarians, I'll use the concept of we're not vegetarians. When I say why are we not vegetarians, I'll refer to the Torah perspective on it, because according to the Torah, we do eat meat. And the question is, why do we eat meat? Seemingly, one should not be allowed to. And I'm more than happy to go forward with this argument with anyone. Morally, I don't see how one could justify being allowed to eat meat. And I'm happy to argue with anyone before you come to Torah. But from a secular point of view, anyone that put so far that I've argued about this, why not to be a vegetarian? Most people I argue start off with saying it's healthy. It's important to eat meat for health reasons. So firstly, you can argue that it's not healthy, but let's say they say, yes, it is healthy, and Game Changer was sponsored by some sort of vegetarian, who knows what. I understood that that's the latest thing on Netflix that tells us not to eat meat. So that was sponsored by people that have agendas, whatever. However, even then, you can say today there's so many things that we can have as a subsidy to our to meat. That really the question is, why do we need to eat meat? What's the benefit of eating meat today? You know, it's not necessarily health, because you can get the whatever it is, iron and the different vitamins. There's other ways of getting those things. It's not like we need them today. Alex, Do you agree with that? That there's subsidies for the health side of meat,
Absolutely.
right? So here now I have the doctor. So he's studying medicine, and he agreed with me. So finish, right? So it's a very hard argument to put health forward because you're going to run into trouble, and that is, what do you mean? You can find the substitutes for it, right? That's the idea. So then the other argument is that's just how it is. That's just how it is. That's how we survived for so many years. We ate animals, and therefore, so pretty much we're saying survivor of the fetus. Survivor of the strongest. So whoever's stronger, he gets to survive, and therefore we eat meat. Well, that's not a moral answer. That means that pretty much you're saying we're just like any other animal. And it's not true, because you have a hippopotamus, you have a rhinoceros, you have all these different big, strong animals that don't have to eat meat to survive. So it's not anymore a sense of survival. And therefore the question again is, why are you eating meat? So I don't think there's anyone that, even the most meat lovers, that can argue and say to me any good reason why to eat meat. Adam Litz, do you have any point you want to make? Why would you be allowed to eat meat before
I think any argument could probably be undermined just by saying that there are alternatives out there.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm not going to give you anything.
Okay,
Shut me
good.
down.
Okay, anyone else? Anyone else want to say something I'm missing from that point of view? Because I don't think, as far as I've argued with anyone, no one gave me a good moral reason why you would be allowed to go and slaughter, end the life of a different animal, different creature, and eat it. So really, that's why I start off with the question, or the title was, why are we not vegetarian? Because there's a very good reason to be. Morally, it's very wrong. There's no way of justifying people eating it.
I have an idea of maybe not why it's morally right, but why it might not be morally wrong.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Because I think en masse there's something wrong with it in the way that we consume meat. But if it was manufactured locally, like say a family who have a farm and they provide the right amount of space per cattle, and they kill it well, and they keep the meat for their family that might last them a year or two in the freezer, I think it would be harder to come up with moral reasons why that is so terribly wrong. Personally, I still feel like that would be difficult to do, and
but why wouldn't it be wrong? It's a life of an animal that's having a good time. It's eating the grass in the farm and enjoying his day, enjoying the view, enjoying the weather, and you just come and slaughter that animal.
Yeah, I don't think it's morally right, but I'm saying it's less morally wrong than mass production of it.
Okay, that's for sure. Mass production, we're going to go into that. But in general, we're starting off you're right, that mass production would be a whole new level of morals. But definitely on the sense of it starting off, just to begin with, why could we eat meat in general? So that's the question.
Rob,
So
can I ask a question?
Yes.
What if we're talking about pests that are detrimental to the ecological system, and they cause more harm than if they weren't around, like foxes and kangaroos? I know they're not kosher, but if we had kosher animals.
Good point. So then again, under that circumstance, you'd be allowed to kill it, and then because you killed it, you'll be allowed to eat it, I guess, because why let it go to waste, right? So that would be a moral claim that, look, we have to do it for the sake of helping us survive, because they're destroying our fields or our farming that we need to eat, and they're destroying it, so therefore we kill them. And based on that, now we go ahead and we eat it because why should that meat rot? Right, I agree that would be a good argument. However, that would be only an argument if you're killing it for the sake of protecting your crop or things like that, and they're a real pest, and then based on that, you're eating it, right? But there's other ways of really stopping them from coming into the fields. There's many other ways. But let's say in general, that would be a good enough reason, right? But when it comes to other animals like cows or sheep that are so dependent on the human and really need them, then there wouldn't be any reason to allow someone to go ahead and eat it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But that would be a good argument, let's say. That would be a little bit, at least that has some sort of value to argue about, to say, well, I'm killing it anyhow, I might as well eat it. So let's say an animal that got hit by a car, to go and eat that would be a good idea because, the meat is going to rot anyway. So might as well eat it and get out of it the nutrients, the vitamins, whatever it needs, whatever will be good for the human. Gesundheit, go and eat that, right? But then again, like you said, that's not kosher. It's a nevela. We permit, according to Torah, to go ahead and slaughter a cow and eat it. So what permits us? How can we be allowed? What's the morals behind that? So really, we have to go back to the question, and we have to ask, from when did it become permitted according to the Torah? And so the answer is, we'll answer first that question. From when did it become permitted according to Torah? And the answer is from the days of Noah. Noah, when he came out of the ark, God said to him, from now you are allowed to eat meat. From beforehand was forbidden for the human to eat meat. So when did meat start becoming permitted by God? I'm talking from a Jewish perspective, and we're going to bring it back to the moral concept, but we're going to start off from this. From a Jewish perspective, when did it start, Bichlal, to permit meat in the world? Was 10 generations into the existence of mankind, and that was Adam to Noah was 10 generations. So when Noah came out of the flood, he came out of the ark, God says from now on you can eat meat, which means that till then it was forbidden for the human being to eat meat. Adam, the first man on earth, ate meat only by angels, which means no meat was shechted or slaughtered for the sake of a human. So no meat was shechted or slaughtered for the human. Adam got meat from the angels, whatever that means. He got it from dead animals, or he got meat without it being slaughtered, whatever that means. It's brought down. But in general, there was no such thing as anyone eating meat till the days of Noah. The question all the commentaries on Chumash to jump. Alex, we touched on this, and they jump and they all ask the question, how could it be that what changed? What changed that from the days of Noah, we were allowed to start eating meat, right? They all jump ahead with this question. And they come with different answers. But before we go to the answers, really we have to ask the following question. What's the difference between a human and an animal? What's the difference between a human and an animal? Now, remember, this question was asked to me by Alex Miller a few years ago. He sent me a video of a monkey by the name of Coco. This monkey is a gorilla, a very sophisticated gorilla, famous gorilla, apparently he's pretty famous, named Coco. And this gorilla is so sophisticated, it can communicate, it can interact with humans. And there was a very close relation between Coco and the lady that was in charge of him. And really, you see this communication is very advanced. And the question was, what's the difference between a human and an animal? Now, when I put that question forward to a bunch of students, I'm more than happy for anyone to try and answer that if you feel like it. Do you feel like answering? I'll give a second for anyone to try and answer that. What's the difference between a human and an animal?
Rob,
Yes,
is it like we have 5? I think you were probably there when I learned this, if I remember it properly. But like there's like 5 levels to a soul.
Okay,
humans have all 5 and animals don't.
Right, so you're starting to answer from a Kabbalistic point of view, meaning you're using the Torah's perspective and you're answering it. But if you would go and ask it not from a Kabbalistic point of view, not from a what we call bird eye view, but rather from down on earth. You go up to some individual and you ask him, what's the difference between you and some bloke, right? You go up to someone and you say, what's the difference between you and an animal? What would be his answer?
Probably that we have free will and we can overcome our desires.
Okay, very good. So what does that mean? So you go over to a human and he says, oh, we're more sophisticated. I would say the answer is we can overcome our desires, which means we're more sophisticated. But we'll explain that it's much more than that. When someone says that we're more sophisticated, he will run into a big problem. And I've tried it out on quite a few arguments with people, and that is we're a more sophisticated animal. Now, the problem with saying that we're just a more sophisticated animal is that when you meet an animal like Coco, and then you see, and sorry for the example, but then you see a person with disabilities, severe disabilities, I don't think that the Coco is not a more sophisticated than this person with the severe disabilities, which means that the person that wants to identify the human as a more sophisticated animal than normal animals, that would mean that he holds that Coco is more of a human than a person with disabilities, severe disabilities, and then that obviously no one would be comfortable with that, right? So we cannot say that the more sophisticated animal is the human. He's more intellectual, he has more capabilities, he could do more things, and therefore he's better than the animal, or he's a more sophisticated animal. Problem with that is because then when you look at the individual, if you zone in onto a human that's not sophisticated, not advanced as much, let's say, like I said, disabilities or whatever, severe disabilities, then obviously you're going to run into trouble. And we hold that every human is important. So how do you explain that? And then I think everyone would be comfortable with saying that every human, doesn't matter how advanced or how disadvantaged they are, they come before a gorilla's life. Am I right with that? Anyone can verify that I'm right? Okay, I guess everyone agrees. Jenna, what do you think? You think I'm right? Oh,
yes, you're right. You're always right.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Okay, so that's the idea, right? So the idea is that you can't be that you claim that the human is less because he's more sophisticated. So what do we have to say? So we have to say like this. Adam Litz said it, and we're going to explain it a little bit more. And this is the following. When we talk about a human being, he has something that's way more different than an animal. And that is not exactly what Adam is saying, but it starts off with the following concept. It wasn't Emma. Oh, okay. It was Emma. Okay, good. So then what it means like this is that the person is created with a mission in this world. Not just a purpose, but a mission. There's a difference between a mission and a purpose. A mission means they have something they have to achieve in this world. A purpose means that they have a usage. We can use it for something. There's a purpose to be used. So when we look at the mission, when we look at a human being, we see the human being has a mission in this world. And therefore, he's very different than the animal. The animal is created with no mission. Now, I know I said before that that's from looking at it from above, but I want to explain why. Because the human being is created with the concept of free will, and therefore it could overcome his desires and things like that. That means that God created this sophisticated existence of a human, and it has a purpose. So, example, when you take Coco, with all due respect to Coco being a sophisticated gorilla, would anyone dare punch the gorilla in the face with all his sophistication? The answer is no, definitely you wouldn't be comfortable punching that gorilla in the face. Why? Because, not comfortable, you wouldn't punch him, because if you punch the gorilla in the face, what might happen is that gorilla can rip the person into pieces. Whoever punches him might get ripped into pieces. Now, even if the gorilla would kill that human being that would punch him, we wouldn't say that gorilla is a murderer. And the reason for that being, even though it's Coco and he's sophisticated, and the reason for that being is it's a gorilla. we don't expect from a gorilla to control itself. Now, sorry for the example I'm about to give, but if you take Arnold Schwarzenegger, when he was a young man, maybe he looked a little bit like a gorilla, but he was not a gorilla. And the reason, and if he would get punched in his face and he would rip someone into pieces, then what would happen under that circumstance, he would be considered a murderer and he would go to jail. Reason for that being is because he's not an animal, he's a human. And from a human, we expect to control his desires or his drive or his whatever is pushing him and overcome that and not go and carry out such a thing. Definitely, if we say not to control it, at least to have boundaries with it. So maybe punch back, you wouldn't get in trouble, but if you would kill, the response to punch in your face to kill someone, that would definitely make him end up in jail, because we understand that the human being cannot carry out his full-fledged anger and he has to control it. That's the idea we see with the human. So therefore we understand that the human is here on planet Earth with a mission, and therefore we understand it creates a difference between the human and the animal. So the human and the animal, the difference between the two in essence is one has a mission and one doesn't. Now, why do I say a mission and I don't just say, oh, there's a difference of this one has free will and he can overcome his urges and his desires and the other one cannot, is because when same question you can ask on me is, what about people with disabilities that don't really have the intellect to control their desires, and they don't understand what does it mean to do this or to do that, so they don't really have that. So what do you say about that? So the answer is they're still a human being. And because they are a human being, they have a mission in this world. Whatever their mission is, they have a mission. That's the understanding we have from a Jewish perspective. But in general, we understand that every human has a mission in this world, which an animal does not have. So an animal does not have a mission in this world. Now, there's a very interesting thing that we have to realize, and that is that from God created the world for mankind. The whole world was created for mankind to achieve his mission. So the purpose of the world, the purpose, not the mission of the world, but the purpose of the world is for mankind to achieve its mission. The mission of mankind in this world is to create a humanity that reaches the highest level which humans can reach. That's the mission we're on. I don't know, sometimes we feel like we're doing great, sometimes it's not so good. But whatever it is, the point is we have that mission. Everything in this world was created in that purpose, everything. So therefore, animals were also created for the purpose of serving mankind to achieve its mission, or to teach him about his mission, to see how great the Creator is, and so on and so on. Now, God wanted to make that very clear to the world, that the whole world was created for mankind, which is a very interesting thing to realize. And how do we see that in the Torah? Because when mankind messed it up, and God said, here I am, I created this world, but mankind is failing to do so, failing to do its job, there's no point to this world. I'm going to flood the world. I'm going to destroy the world. There's no point to this world because mankind is just getting it wrong. And that's what happened in the generation of Noah. The world reached a stage which just was pointless. Humans were stealing and behaving in tremendous immorality. People were behaving not committed to any relationship. They weren't committed to each other. Everything was messed up. So God says, okay, enough. This world is ending. And therefore God made a flood and he says, God, I'm ending the world. Now he ends the world. And what happens when he ends the world? He says, okay, however, I'm going to restart the world. And you know who's going to restart the world? A human being is going to save the world. He's going to save all the animals. He's going to save everything. Now everyone understands. First of all, I destroyed the world when humans messed it up, showing that it's all about the human. That's the first thing. Secondly, God has done, he's made the world to be saved by a human being, to show this is your job as a human, to save the world. That's your job in this world. This is what you're meant to be doing. So now we have a whole new understanding. When Noah comes out of the ark, there's a new understanding to the world that till now was a little bit off. And that is, humans now realize, wait a second, we have a tremendous mission on this planet, and the whole world is created for that purpose of us achieving our mission. But because till the generation of Noah, when they were forbidden to have meat, they kind of compared themselves to animals. They saw themselves as equals. And therefore, they behaved like animals. They kind of lost their understanding of human as above an animal. God said when they came out of the ark, he says, listen, in order that a human realizes and understands, for the rest of mankind, I want them to understand this idea, that animals and humans are on different platforms. A human is on a much higher platform than any creature that there is. I'm going to permit to the human to eat for the purpose of whatever it needs. I'm going to permit him to use the animal because the animal is here for the purpose of human. That means that the human will also be allowed to eat the animal because the human is on a higher level. That's a profound way of making you realize that you're not an animal, that you can eat animals. That's a profound way of a person always knowing, wait a second, how can we eat animals? We're not animals. Must be, we're on a higher level than animals. So that's to create that understanding that a human always remembers, I'm not an animal. And don't learn from an animal how to behave. Rather, your job is to save the animals, to take care of the animals. Now, with that comes, again, a great responsibility, which means if you have a dog at home, you have to provide your dog food. If you're sitting down for lunch, you have to give your dog lunch before you eat lunch because there's a concept of tzar b'lechaim, which means you're not allowed to torture animals. So you have a great responsibility when you're dealing with animals to treat animals nicely and look after them, right? But at the same time, we are starting to understand why we are allowed to eat the animal. Because the animal is here to serve the purpose of humans. Whatever the purpose of the human is, he's allowed to use that animal for that purpose. If it's to eat, if he wants to eat, so then he's allowed to eat an animal because the animal is here for the purpose of the human. Any questions so far before I move on a little bit more? I'm sure someone has a question. No?
I have
Jenna.
a question. Well, I guess especially with Shabbos, are we allowed to eat an animal, or are we obligated to eat an animal?
Oh, okay. Very good. Very good question. So then it works like this. Once we understand that, so we understand that we're allowed to eat an animal, that we understand that we're above animal. Now, it's very important to realize that, just for a second to stop there. When you go and you say, no, but wait a second, animals and humans should be the same. We should, if we're so important, if the human has such a mission and he has to bring mankind to the highest level, so then also treat the animals on that level, the answer to that is it's impossible to do so. Meaning, like this, if you say, and this would be an argument that I would have probably with a lot of Habonim people, because I did have this argument with Habonim before, and that is that they say treat everyone equally. Treat everyone equally. Now, the argument I have to that is you must be a terrible son if you do so, or daughter if you do so. Why? Because if you're treating your mother the way you treat a stranger, that's a problem. If you treat your father the way you treat a stranger, that's a problem. Oh, but I treat my stranger like I treat my father. That's also weird. So you cannot treat a stranger the way you treat your parents. You cannot treat siblings the way you treat strangers or people from the street. In fact, you should not treat your siblings the way you treat your friends. Maybe you should. But I'm talking under normal circumstance. You should be treating your siblings more, or nicer, or better. You have a greater responsibility to them than you have to your friends. And then to your friends, you have more of a responsibility, more of a concept of looking after them than you have towards a stranger on the street. So responsibilities, you can't say to me, oh, treat everyone equally. No, there's certain ways of behaving with human beings. Now, if I start treating everybody the same, I'm going to drop the way I treat those that are close to me. It's impossible to treat everyone to the highest level. That would be my argument. Example for that is if a dog is in the park, and sorry for the example for all the dog lovers, but if I'm in the park with a kid that happens to be very frightened of dogs for some reason, I guess he's a religious boy, just kidding, but he's scared of dogs. He's scared of dogs. and the dog starts charging at him. Now I pick up the kid, I put him in my arm, and the dog runs up, and I can hear the kid's heart is pumping, and he's clinging on to me, and he's crying, and he's tearing away, and the dog gets close, and I kind of get the dog to go away, but he doesn't. He's really being stubborn, and he starts jumping on me to try and touch the kid, and the kid's heartbeat is going up, and he's just losing it, and I know he has like a scaredness from the dog, and I gave the dog a kick. Why? Because I realized this kid is suffering. This dog is coming and scaring him. I know the dog doesn't mean it. I know he's a sweet little dog, but in the end of the day, a human being is getting scared of the dog and really, really nervous, and therefore I kicked the dog. I guarantee you the owner would be very angry with me. How do you kick the dog? And I'll turn around to the owner and I'll say, what do you mean? I have a kid, a human being here that's petrified of the dog and getting more and more scared. You want to tell me that your dog comes before a human being that's getting scared? I'll give your dog a kick because he's a dog and this is a human. And in the eyes of this human being that owns the dog, I hope he would very, very strongly disagree with me. And maybe some people here disagree with me because as far as they're concerned, the dog is, how can you kick a dog? So what? So the human being will be a little bit scared. So what? You kick a dog that's not yours, who gives you the right to do so? Maybe we should look at it like this. So what? So a dog gets a kick. To say, for the sake of the human, who cares? So the dog got a kick, big deal, who cares? The human being was scared, right? Depends where you put it. If you start picking up the human or you pick up the dog. Depends what you can see is important. So here you see that once you start equalizing between things, you're obviously less treating the human being and elevating the way you treat the animal. So that's the problem why we can't have it always equal. So coming back to Jenna's question, should one eat meat? Is that like, should one eat it or is it something that's you can eat meat? So we had in last week's Parsha Re'eh, in fact, talks about if you desire to eat meat, and the commentaries on it explain and say that it's not that you could eat it, that you should eat meat. Eating meat is wrong. It's wrong. Why should you be eating meat? It's not what should one do. But if you have a desire to eat meat, you are allowed to eat meat. So seemingly it's saying that meat is not something that one should go after and try and have. Rather, one should prevent himself from having meat. In fact, it's brought down that a sick person can have meat and so on, but not generally speaking to eat meat. However, there's one place that we do allow eating meat, and it's in fact a good thing. And that is when we are behaving on the highest level of mankind, which means if we're doing it for something that's a high purpose, that's serving something important, then you can eat meat. What is such a purpose? Such a purpose is a purpose of what we consider as the highest thing to do as a religious Jew. Again, now I'm going into the religious concepts of this, and that is eating on your Yom Tov or your Shabbos, having meat, because now you're having it you're having it on a higher level. You're having it in a spiritual sense. This is something very good. So you're using the animal for the purpose of something great. Let me explain that for 1 second, just to clarify it. So if you had pieces of a human, organs of a human being being used in classes, no worries, Alex, all the best. So someone had a man's organs in a classroom, right? Would you be comfortable with organs of a human being being passed around by a bunch of youngsters looking at it? And the answer is, if it's for the purpose of medicine, of educating them, making them learn to be doctors or dentists or whatever it is, so we're comfortable with it. The reason for that being is because it's serving a greater purpose, okay? It's serving a purpose that's worthwhile. So under normal circumstance, obviously everyone would be uncomfortable of having legs of humans and hands of humans being passed around and students looking at it and touching it. But if it's for a purpose of something so important of letting human beings, learn how to study medicine and things like that, then obviously we would allow such a thing. That's the idea, right? So if that's true, we see that something that serves a greater purpose, we allow ourselves to use it because it's such a high purpose. It's worthwhile, even though Yes, obviously moving organs of human being around between students is not a nice thing, but because it's for something so important, it's worth it. And then the opposite, perhaps we look at the person that's done it and we say, wow, what an amazing individual that is willing to donate his organs to be used for the sake of society. That's what we would say. Again, the Torah's perspective on it is different, but the point is clear that we would see that as something that, important, like he's willing to give his own organs to be used for the sake of medicine. So the same when it comes to the animal. When you're having a Shabbos meal, it's the highest level that a human can reach according to our understanding of Torah. It's the highest level of a human eating for the right reasons. And therefore, under that circumstance, it's the only time that we would say, go ahead and have the meat, in order that you can have on your Shabbos table where you're going to talk words of Torah, you're going to sing songs and praise God and recognize the creation of God and the beauty of this world and understand the mission of a human being. And that's what Shabbos represents, and Yom Tov and so on. Then under that circumstance, to eat meat would be a mitzvah. But any other time that you eat it just because out of desire, one should try and refrain from eating meat. Now, that's for me something that I was looking into, and I realized that obviously my perspective on this wasn't 100% right. I always thought that go ahead, eat as much as you want. But seems from all the commentaries on Chumash and the Mefarshim and Shulchan Aruch that one should try and restrain from eating meat as much as possible, and only under circumstances of mitzvah and things like that, one should go and enjoy the meat. Now, you're allowed to. It doesn't mean that someone that wants to go to buy a sandwich at Sandwich Mart should not go and buy it. But what it's telling us is really one should try to minimize the amount of meat that they eat. And one more point, and then if anyone wants to open up for questions. But the last point is like this: the mass production that exists today is a reason to say I want to become a vegetarian. Meaning, so to be a vegetarian and say it's not moral to eat animals, that you cannot say. Reason for that being is because God said you're allowed to eat it. Why? Because the human is allowed to, because the human has a mission, and the animals is one of those that serve that. Their purpose is to serve the mission of the human. So the human is permitted, he's allowed to eat it. He should focus on all the morals about treating each other nicely, not speaking slander, and focus between man and man, eventually reaching the level of vegetarian perhaps. But if you don't want to eat it because the mass production and you don't like how the animals are treated and so on, that's already a legitimate reason to say, you know what, I'm a vegetarian throughout the week, not because I hold that a human cannot eat animal, but because I hold that the mass production is a wrong thing. That would be a good argument, even for a religious Jew that holds that God permits for us meat. That would be a good enough reason to say it's inhumane the way we treat the animals till in the mass production till they get slaughtered, and for that reason I don't eat. So that would be a good argument. But if we get our morals messed up, that's a problem. I'll give two examples of it. I heard this from Rabbi. Hitler was a vegetarian, so obviously not more needs to say about that. And then also, when we see a human drop to the level of an animal, we refer to him as a animal, meaning when we see a guy that's a wild beast and he behaves like a mashigana, what we say that guy's an animal, stay away from him, right? Because when a human doesn't behave like a human being, he drops humanity. We see that and we understand that that's animalistic, and we immediately refer to him as an animal, a beast. Stay away from him. A person that represents only body is referred to as a beast, an animal, right? I'm sure there's many examples for that. And one more example is if you see a human, imagine you're walking on the street and you see a human being ripping into raw meat, sitting on four legs. Well, not exactly, crouching onto his hands and knees and eating like a dog, ripping into a piece of meat with no clothes on, just perhaps something covering himself in the places. So you would look at that and you would say, wow, you would feel uncomfortable to look at that. Why? Because what you're seeing is mankind drop to the level of an animal. That's very uncomfortable for a human being to see, and therefore we would probably all look away and feel very uncomfortable with that. When a human drops to the level of an animal, it's very uncomfortable, because humanity, that's the purpose of the world, of humanity reaching the level of caring about each other, looking after others, and as well looking after the animals. That's the idea for today. Shkoyach, any questions, more than welcome. No. Wow, I didn't realize that was so clear. Okay, Jenna, go for it.
No questions, just a
No
shkoyach. And
questions. Okay,
shkoyach,
thank
Rav
you.
David.
Okay, Anna, any questions? Anna, I'm sure you have something to ask. No.
I have a question.
Oh, good, Ash.
I just popped in 5 seconds ago. Is the shiur recorded? Do you have any idea?
Yes, it's recorded. You sent me 2 messages about it. Yes,
I know
it's recorded.
because on my phone it doesn't say recording. Okay. All right. Well, then I was going to ask you what
is recorded.
What was the result with vegetarianism? But I'll just watch the recording.
Okay. Adam, any questions on that?
Just, I don't know if this is relevant, but you mentioned before, like, we're allowed to eat animals, like, if they die. Like, you gave the example of a cow getting hit by a car. Would you be able to eat that, though, because it wasn't, like, shechted?
No.
Is it considered kosher or no?
No, you wouldn't be able to eat that. It's not kosher anymore. I'll tell you an interesting question that came to me. It brings up an interesting subject, and that is, I got a message from someone that the bar mitzvah boy, he's a vegan or something like that, and he will not touch tefillin because tefillin is made out of parchment, out of a skin of a. So what should he tell that kid? So that was a very tricky question. Now, I use that idea of, again, it's a much longer answer and makes sense, but I pretty much went into the idea that if you're using an animal for the highest level of importance, the animal would want that. The animal would be happy for that, meaning for the animal, that's a merit, that you're using its skin to wear tefillin, which when a person puts on tefillin, what is he doing? He's declaring that he's going to try his best to be a good person today, with his thoughts, with his actions, and so on. So, of course, an animal would be more than happy that that's what is being used for a human to declare that every morning. That was my answer to the kid. But there is tefillin out there that are made out of cows that weren't shechted, but rather hit by cars and things like that. So then that's the type of tefillin that they were suggesting to this kid to use. That exists out there, which is quite interesting. So that at least the kid knows no animal was killed for my tefillin. The animal died naturally or was hit by a car or something like that, and then it was taken and my tefillin is made from something like that. That makes, but really that kid, it didn't help for that kid because that kid said he gets disgusted by anything to do with made out of any leather of any animal. He feels uncomfortable with that. So could he make tefillin out of like paper or cardboard or something like that? And the answer is no. It would be pointless. It wouldn't be kosher, and the bracha on it would be a in vain, and it would be like mentioning God in an vain way. So that was the answer to that. So yes, you could eat that meat if you keep not kosher. That would be meat that you can eat. Right?
Yep. All right. Thanks.
Shkoyach, everybody. No questions. Amy, I'm surprised you don't have any questions.
I do have a question, but you won't be able to hear me.
Okay, try.
You know, I hear the alarms going on in the background.
Oh, wow. What's going on?
There's a fire. Okay, they've stopped now. I wanted to ask, if you're only supposed to like eat meat for a higher purpose, does that mean that anyone who eats it like really grossly or disrespectfully or whatever, like, is that frowned upon?
Hello? Sorry, I'm here. Again, restart.
Oh, so since you said that you should only eat meat when it's like for an elevated purpose, does that mean anyone who eats it in like a grossly disrespectful way or like not for the reason that it's intended to, is that frowned upon, or like just because you're allowed to, you can abuse like the ability to eat meat however you want? So
it's very interesting. It seems to be frowned upon when you look into the details of it. But I would say that I mean, I grew up religious, and I've been eating meat for just for the fun, for barbecue, doing a barbecue with friends, right? So, you know, you go to a sandwich bar, you get a sandwich with meat, but it seems from all the commentaries on Chumash and so on that it's not a good idea. Meaning, one should definitely try and refrain from it. Yes, definitely, that seems to be the given thing. I mean, again, I guess that's a higher level. I guess people that are trying to keep kosher, you don't tell them, well, don't eat meat now, you know, like enough they're trying to keep kosher. So as long as they're eating kosher meat, they're okay. But once a person wants to start climbing and growing and becoming a better individual, then definitely that's another step in the right direction, which for me, means I have to start revisiting my meals at home. But that's the idea, to try and minimize the amount of eating of meat. Yes, 100%. That would be the attitude of growth. Yes.
Thanks. Well, then I would argue that it's easier to keep kosher if you don't eat meat. Like that would be a step before.
It's easier to keep kosher when you don't eat meat. Yeah, I hear that. It's a way, right? Yeah, Ash, what do you think about that? Is it a good idea?
Yes, I think for me it's easier during the week. I mean, I haven't been here to hear all the points you raised, but especially with meat and milk and that kind of thing during the week, I don't have to think about it at all. And then when I do eat meat, which is on Shabbat, Friday night and Saturday, it's much nicer and it's something I look forward to. It's not just like the regular meal that I have on a Wednesday night as well.
And it makes Shabbos special as well.
Correct. Very much.
Okay. Adina, what do you want to ask?
I wanted to ask, what's the approach on like fish? And yeah, it's still an animal, but.
Yeah, so fish, the truth is I have to look into fish a little bit more. No one spoke about fish. When they speak about the things, they don't mention fish. It says basar. When it talks about the verse in the Chumash on last week's parsha, it says, B'chol avat nafshecha tochal basar. It talks about meat. It doesn't refer to fish. So I guess fish is different. We have to understand why. And what's the reason? Maybe it's less animalistic. I'm not sure. I have to look into that. Great question. I'm not sure. Answer is I don't know. I have to look into it. Okay, Sean, you want to ask something?
I was actually literally going to ask the exact same question about fish.
Okay, great. Okay, so the answer is I don't know. Okay, shkoyach everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Have a great day.
Thanks, Rav.
Shkoyach,
Thanks, Rabbi.
Hey, all the best. I hope
Thank
the fire
you.
is out. Shkoyach, Jenna. Jenna, David wants to say hello to you.
Okay.
Let me turn off the
Hang
recording.
on.